Friday nights were always a bit of a madhouse at our local theater. It wasn't the most expensive place, but it had that nice, clean vibe. A place people came to unwind after a grind of a week. My girlfriend and I had been looking forward to this night for a while, and when we stepped into the lobby, the buzz of excitement was almost palpable. The scent of popcorn hung in the air, the hum of soda machines dispensing fizzy drinks added to the atmosphere, and everywhere you looked, groups of friends and couples milled about, chatting and laughing, all eager for the same thing: 2 hours of escape. We got our tickets, the ones for a small indie film we'd both been excited to see. Not the blockbuster of the year, but it was getting great reviews, and it was something different. We headed toward the theater, the soft murmur of chatter and footfalls following us through the darkened hallways. We slid into seats near the back, second to last row. Perfect. Not too close, but with a good view. The theater was about half full. People scattered mostly in the middle, but behind us, there was just one guy sitting a few seats back. He was young, early 20s maybe, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, eyes glued to the screen. I barely even noticed him at first. The opening. Credits rolled, and for a while everything was just normal. The flickering light from the screen casting soft shadows on the walls, the familiar sounds of people shifting in their seats, unwrapping snacks, and the occasional sip from a drink. Then, out of nowhere, something small hit my girlfriend's shoulder. She barely flinched, just shifted a little, like it was nothing. I didn't think much of it at first either. Maybe a popcorn kernel? But a few minutes later, another piece of popcorn landed right on her lap. I frowned, now paying more attention. I turned my head, scanning the rows behind us, and saw the guy, still, looking straight ahead, not even acknowledging us. My first instinct was to brush it off. Maybe he didn't mean to. Maybe he'd accidentally bumped his bucket or something. But then, a third piece sailed through the air and bounced off my girlfriend's hair. That wasn't an accident. I whipped around in my seat, locking eyes with him. He didn't look startled or apologetic. He just stared at me, that damn smirk, playing on his lips as he turned back to the screen. I motioned with my hand, low enough so I wouldn't disturb anyone else. "Hey, knock it off!" Nothing. He didn't even blink. Just sat there like I was invisible, his face blank. A beat passed, and I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just some accident anymore. Something wasn't right. I turned back to the movie, but I could feel the tension rise. For a minute I thought it was over, but then my girlfriend leaned over, whispering that she needed to use the bathroom. She stood up, her seat squeaking slightly as she pushed it back, and made her way down the aisle. But just as she was passing him, I heard it, a sharp, loud whistle, like a wolf call. My fists clenched. I spun around, my voice low but firm. "Cut it out," I said, teeth gritted. "That's rude." He didn't flinch. Instead, he flashed a grin and did some weird hand gesture like he was making fun of me, fingers snapping like a puppet. That was it. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping even lower. "Do you want to take this outside?" His face faltered for a second, but he quickly raised his hands, shaking his head. "Relax, man. Just watching the movie," he muttered, almost bored. I glared at him for a second longer, then turned back, to the front. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to escalate it, but I could tell my girlfriend was already back and I wasn't about to let this jerk ruin the night. A few minutes later, she returned, and by then, thankfully, the guy had stopped. But something in the air had changed. It was like I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. The movie ended, and we laughed it off as we made our way out of the theater, talking about how weird the whole thing had been. But we thought it was just some random idiot trying to mess with us, and that'd be the last we'd see of him. But as we stepped out into the parking lot, it hit me. The lot had emptied out a lot faster than I'd expected. When we'd pulled in earlier, it had been packed, and now there were only a handful of cars left. Under the dim streetlights, the place felt deserted. And then I saw him. The same guy from the theater. He was standing by a car with a few other guys, maybe 3 or 4 of them, all leaning against the vehicle, laughing and chatting. I could feel their eyes on us as we walked. And then, without warning, he called out, "Hey, loser!" My stomach twisted. The guy followed up with a curse, directed at one of us. I couldn't tell which. I wasn't about to let it slide. "Go to hell," I shot back, voice steady but tight with anger. He laughed, the sound sharp, and his friends joined in. We exchanged a couple more words, but I kept walking. I wasn't going to get into something stupid in the parking lot. We reached my car, and I unlocked it quickly, both of us climbing in. I started the engine and pulled out of the spot, but as soon as I did, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. The guys had gotten into their car, and they were following us. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence, that they were just leaving at the same time. But when we hit the street, it was clear it wasn't. They were right on our tail. For a moment, they kept a decent distance, but then I saw their car jerk from side to side, swerving like they were trying to box us in. My pulse raced, and the sick feeling in my gut hit like a wave. What the hell did they want? I gripped the steering wheel, my mind spinning. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. I didn't know what they wanted, but I sure as hell didn't want to find out. "We should head back to the theater," I muttered, my grip on the steering wheel tightening until my knuckles were white. My girlfriend glanced at me, eyes wide with fear. Yeah, good idea." Her voice trembled a little, but she nodded quickly, the tension hanging thick in the air between us. I swallowed hard and turned the wheel at the next intersection, making a sharp U-turn. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw their headlights shift. They did the exact same thing. They weren't playing around. They were chasing us. My heart pounded in my chest. For a moment, I wondered if they were going to try to force us off the road or worse. But I shoved that thought down, trying to stay focused. My mind was racing. This wasn't just some punk messing with us anymore. I had to get us back to safety. The theater parking lot loomed ahead. I spotted an open space near the entrance and quickly veered into it, not even bothering to check for cars behind us. I just wanted to be somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't out there on the road with them. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The car behind us slowed, but didn't follow us into the lot. They pulled into a spot a few spaces away, just watching us, didn't hesitate. "Come on," I said, voice tight, and we scrambled out of the car. My heart hammered in my chest as we hurried toward the theater's doors, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the empty lot. We didn't even look back. Inside, the lobby was a burst of light and noise, a stark contrast to the eerie quiet outside. I made a beeline for the front desk, trying to keep my cool, but I could feel the panic creeping in. "Excuse me," I said to the employee behind the counter, voice a little too sharp. "We've got a problem. Some guys, they're following us." The employee didn't react the way I expected. No shock, no surprise. He just sighed and leaned forward, glancing out the window. "Yeah, we know those guys," he said, almost casually. "That one you mentioned, he and a buddy were banned from here a few weeks ago. They've been causing trouble for a while." A cold chill crawled up my spine. I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. Banned? That meant this. Wasn't some random thing. These assholes had done this before. The employee glanced out the window again, then grabbed the phone. "I'll call the cops," he said, and within minutes the flashing lights of a patrol car lit up the parking lot. We stayed inside, out of sight, watching through the windows as the cops approached the car. The guys were still hanging around, not doing much, just waiting. When the officers confronted them, I expected a fight or at least some resistance, but no. They barely even put up a struggle. After a quick exchange, the cops gave them a warning, told them to leave and not come back. I stayed behind the counter, my pulse finally starting to slow. I didn't want to leave until they were gone, just in case. My girlfriend clung to my side, her eyes wide, still rattled by the whole thing. It wasn't until I saw their car pulling out of the lot that I let out the breath I'd been holding. "Let's go," I said, voice steady but still laced with tension. We drove home in silence, the weight of what had just happened hanging between us. It wasn't until we were finally back at my place, doors locked, the night feeling too quiet, that I started to feel a little safer. That was months ago. And every time I pull into that parking lot, I can't help but glance around, half expecting to see him again. That smug look on his face, those guys circling like sharks. So far, I haven't seen him. And honestly, I hope I never do. The road stretched ahead, an endless strip of asphalt swallowing the headlights. The monotonous hum of the tires against the pavement seemed to blend with the low buzz of the radio, the kind of sound that fades into the background until it's all you hear. Cindy and I had been driving for what felt like hours, the excitement of the trip still keeping us alert, but the fatigue of the road was starting to settle in. Nothing spectacular, just a much-needed getaway, a break from the routines we'd both fallen into. Cindy and I had been best friends since high school. It was the kind of friendship where you don't need to check in every day, but you pick up right where you left off, no matter the time that passed. I never had to second-guess her, and she was the one person who could make me laugh, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. This trip was something we'd always talked about, and now that we were finally here, the reality of it still felt strange, almost surreal. The plan was simple: drive through a few states, explore, see new things, and just forget about work, bills, and all that other crap. No rigid itinerary, just freedom. But the open road had a way of wearing you down after a while. "We should stop soon," Cindy said, her voice thick with exhaustion, followed by a yawn she tried to cover up with. "Her hand? Yeah, I was thinking the same. Let's find a place to crash for the night," I replied. We pulled out her phone, and after a quick search we found a cheap hotel about 30 minutes off the highway. It wasn't fancy, but it had decent reviews. At that point, decent was all we were looking for. We didn't need a luxury suite, just somewhere to sleep. When we got there, the area felt exactly like what you'd expect from an off-the-highway stop. A few run-of-the-mill chain restaurants, a gas station, and a cinema that looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. Nothing exciting. We checked in, got our key, and headed up to the room around 8 p.m. Despite the drive, neither of us felt like crawling straight into bed. Sitting in a car for hours had left us antsy, like our legs needed to do something else before we could relax. Cindy was the first to spot the movie theater. "Hey, why don't we check out that theater? Might be fun to catch a late-night show," she suggested, gesturing toward the glowing marquee outside. I considered it for a moment. "Sure, why not? A good way to end the night before we hit the road again." We grabbed our wallets and stepped into the cool night air. The theater was close, just a short walk from the hotel. As we approached, I noticed something off about the parking lot. There were a few cars, sure, but not nearly as many as I would have expected for a theater at this hour. Maybe it was a quiet night, I thought. But still, something didn't sit right. We walked inside, the lobby as brightly lit as any other. Movie posters covered the walls, the scent of popcorn lingering in the air, and the digital screens above the counter listed the showtimes. It felt normal. Too normal, maybe, except for one glaring detail. The place was completely empty. No customers, no staff, not a single soul. Cindy and I exchanged a glance. Her eyebrows furrowed. "Where is everyone?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. It was just strange. We hesitated, but then, because what else were we supposed to do? We ventured further into the lobby. The silence hit us like a weight. It was too quiet. There wasn't even the usual hum of distant conversations or the soft sounds of a movie playing in another room. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. Nothing. We made our way to the concession stand, half expecting someone to appear from the back. But there was no one. The popcorn machine sat idle, candy racks neatly stocked, as if everything had been left untouched. It didn't make sense. "This is weird," Cindy muttered, her voice low. I nodded, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. It was like walking through a ghost town, but the building was alive, too alive. We decided to check the screening rooms. As we walked down the hallway, the carpet felt strangely soft beneath our feet, and the silence only grew more intense. There were several doors, each leading to a different theater. Cindy reached for one and slowly pushed it open. Complete darkness. No screen glowing. No soft lighting from the walls. Just black. Goosebumps prickled across my skin. "Let's try another," Cindy suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. Now we tried another door. Same thing. Darkness. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "This doesn't make sense," I whispered, more to myself than to Cindy. Cindy swallowed hard. "I don't like this." Neither did I. We kept walking down the hallway, the air heavy, oppressive. At the very end was a door that led outside, probably to an emergency exit. I didn't want to walk back through that empty lobby, so without saying a word, we both silently agreed to take the exit and leave. The moment we stepped outside, the fresh air hit me like a wave of relief, but it didn't last. We rounded the corner to the front of the building, and then we stopped dead in our tracks. The theater was pitch black, all the lights gone. The marquee, the sign, everything. Just darkness. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the night air surrounding us. We rushed back to the front doors, both of us hesitant, but drawn toward the strange emptiness. The lobby, once so brightly lit, was now shrouded in darkness. The once familiar scene felt wrong, empty, abandoned, like something had changed in the blink of an eye. My heart was thudding in my chest as I reached for the door handle. Locked. I couldn't breathe. Panic surged up my throat, thick and hot. "How?" Cindy's voice broke as she stared at the door, her eyes wide, as if the sight was too much for her to comprehend. "We were just inside." I didn't have words. My mind was spinning, trying to piece together something that didn't make sense. Had we imagined it? No. We'd walked through that lobby. We'd smelled the popcorn and seen the movie posters. We hadn't dreamt it all, so why did it look like it had been abandoned for years? I couldn't answer her. Neither of us said a word. As we turned away, our steps quickening into a near run, as if the darkness behind us might catch up. We practically bolted back to the hotel, slipping through the door the moment we reached our room and locking it behind us. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. We didn't discuss what had just happened. Couldn't. It didn't feel real, and talking about it might make it worse. Instead, we put on a movie, the noise filling the space between us, but I could feel that neither of us was watching it. We were both too shaken, too lost in our own thoughts. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The slightest sound, a creak in the walls, the hum of a passing car, set my nerves on edge. I kept staring at the dark corners of the room, waiting for something, anything, to shift. Morning dragged on, slow and heavy. When it was finally time to check out, Cindy and I hesitated at the car. Without a word, we both knew we had to go back to the theater. We didn't speak about it, but we couldn't just leave without answers, even if we weren't sure we wanted them. We pulled into the parking lot and my stomach twisted. The building looked like something from a forgotten world, abandoned, like no one had been near it in years. The windows were coated in dust, and the doors were sealed shut, like no one had dared to open them in a long time. The marquee, bright and full of life just hours ago, was now a barren, lifeless void. A cold dread settled in my bones, creeping through my veins. Cindy pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she searched for any information about the theater. Her face paled as she read aloud. "It says it's been permanently closed for months." Silence. I stared at the theater, my mind scrambling to find an explanation, a reason, anything that made sense. But the more I thought about it, the less I understood. How had we gotten inside? How had the lights been on, the lobby so alive? And, more importantly, who or what had let us in? We didn't stay long enough to find out. Cindy shoved the car into drive and we sped away, not speaking a word until we were miles out of town. Even now, years later, I still can't make sense of that night. All I know is this: I'll never go back. Back when I was 17, maybe 18, I had my first real job working the concession stand at the old Regal Theater a few blocks from my folks' place. We lived in this quiet little neighborhood where nothing much happened, so landing a gig that didn't involve flipping burgers felt like a big deal. I'd walk to work most evenings, cut through a church parking lot and past an auto shop, and by the time I got there, The neon lights from the marquee were already flickering in that half-busted way they always did. Smelled like popcorn and melted chocolate the second you stepped through the front doors, cozy if a little sticky. That night started like any other slow evening shift. The last movie had already started, some action flick with gunshots every 5 seconds, and the crowds were gone. Most of the crew had clocked out. It was just me behind the counter, restocking candy and wiping down surfaces, and Adam up front, manning the ticket booth and sweeping up popcorn spills. Adam was in his early 20s, did this job way too long, and always looked like he wanted to be somewhere else. He used to joke that the theater was haunted, especially after hours when the place got real quiet. I'd laugh, but sometimes I half believed him. I remember thinking how still everything felt, like the building itself had exhaled. That silence after the last film starts, it's heavy. You start hearing things, the hum of the soda machine, the ice settling in the dispenser, your own heartbeat if you stand still long enough. I figured Adam had already locked the doors like usual, so I went about my business minding my own. Then I caught something move in my periphery. Subtle, but enough to make me freeze with the rag still in my hand. The front doors were open, not wide, just cracked, like someone had slipped through and didn't bother pulling them shut behind them. And sure enough, some guy walked in. I knew right away something was off. He wore this dingy brown coat, looked like army surplus or something, and a knit cap pulled down over most of his head. Could have been cold out, sure, but he moved weird. Head low, shoulders stiff, walking fast like he knew exactly where he was going. He didn't look at me, didn't glance at the ticket booth either, just glided right past like he owned the place. I watched him go without saying a word. For a second I thought, maybe he worked here and I just didn't recognize him. But no, that wasn't it. There was something wrong about him. The way he moved, like he was trying not to be seen, but not in a nervous way. More like he didn't care if he was seen, like it wouldn't matter. He turned the corner into the hallway leading to the theaters. Didn't check what was playing, didn't peek in to see which screen had people in it. Just kept walking straight, fast, silent. I stood there behind the counter, rag still in my hand, watching him disappear. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything. People sneak into theaters sometimes, teenagers mostly. But this guy? He wasn't sneaking. He wasn't even hiding. That's what made it worse. I gave it a few minutes, trying to tell myself it was nothing. But my gut wouldn't let it go. I ended up finding Adam sweeping near Theater 2. He looked up at me with that usual tired expression. "Hey man," I said, trying to sound casual. You locked the front doors yet?" Adam blinked, then groaned. "Shit, I forgot." "Why?" I told him what I saw, and his whole posture shifted. He set the broom down, rubbed the back of his neck. "You serious?" "Dead serious," I said. He didn't even look at me. We walked back to the front together. Adam locked the doors, checked the latch twice. Then we stood there in silence for a second, trying to act like everything was fine. But we both knew it wasn't. We didn't know where the guy went. The movie was still playing, so maybe he'd slipped in. Or maybe he was just wandering. We didn't talk about it much after that. Just went back to closing things down, avoiding eye contact like if we didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't be real. It wasn't until after the final show let out and the last few customers shuffled out the doors that we saw him again. He was standing at the far end of the hallway, just past the soda machines. I don't even know how long. He'd been there. He was still, completely still. Same coat, same hat, just watching us. No blinking, no shifting, no sound. Like a damn statue. I froze. My body just locked up. I felt my pulse jump into my throat. Adam stopped too. We just stared at him. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. "What the hell?" Adam muttered, just under his breath. Something in my chest twisted. The kind of fear that doesn't make sense right away but roots itself deep anyway. I stepped forward, heart pounding in my ears. "Hey!" I called out, my voice cracking slightly. "The theater's closed. You need to leave." Nothing. Not even a twitch. I tried to sound tougher then, I felt. Sir, still nothing. I glanced at Adam. He looked just as spooked as I felt. I took another step forward. The guy finally reacted. He lifted his hand, slow, mechanical, and waved at me. A slow, deliberate wave. Not friendly, not threatening, just wrong. Something cold crawled up my spine and settled there, but it wasn't a friendly wave. There was no grin, no nod, nothing remotely human about it. Just that slow, robotic hand moving side to side like a puppet with broken strings. His face stayed blank, his eyes locked onto mine like he was looking through me. It sent this sick little shiver crawling up the back of my neck. Adam stood stiff beside me, staring with his mouth slightly open like he was trying to figure out if we were both seeing the same thing. We locked eyes, silently agreeing. "This ain't right, dude," Adam whispered, barely moving his lips. "What the hell is he doing?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know, but I don't like it." We backed into the lobby, just far enough to put a wall between us and that thing standing in the hallway. Adam was already pulling out his phone, fingers fumbling. "You think we should call someone?" he asked. "Like, security? Cops?" I glanced toward the glass entrance doors, pitch black outside. The closest police station was 10 minutes away with lights and sirens. We'd probably be laughed off the line if all we had to say was, "There's a guy waving at us weird. He hasn't done anything yet," I said, voice low. "But he's not right. That ain't just some drunk or lost dude." "He's messing with us," Adam muttered. "Feels like he's enjoying this." We hesitated, then stepped back toward us. The hallway, just enough to peek around the corner. He hadn't moved, still rooted to the spot, like a statue carved into the damn linoleum. His head tilted slightly now, like he was listening for something. Watching, waiting. He waved again. Same motion, same emptiness. Then he started walking toward us. Not fast, not threatening, just steady, like he had all the time in the world to close the distance. That weird, heavy silence followed him, like even the air didn't want to move. "Back," I hissed. "Go, now." Adam didn't argue. We stepped backward fast, nearly tripping over the mop bucket someone had left near the arcade machines. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting him to be right behind us. But when we reached the lobby and turned back, he wasn't there. We waited. A minute passed. Then 2. Nothing. Adam exhaled, hand gripping the back of his neck. "What the actual hell is going on?" I didn't answer. I was scanning the hallway, the corners, the reflections in the glass. No movement, no shadow, no sound except the buzz of the fluorescent lights and the distant hum of the popcorn warmer behind me. We started searching. Every hallway, every exit. Checked the side doors, the emergency exit near Theater 6. Even the locked supply closet near the restrooms. Nothing. Not a single damn sign he'd been there at all. It was like the moment we took our eyes off him, he vanished. Gone. Adam and I stood outside the theater afterward, looking out at the dark parking lot. Every shadow suddenly. Suspect. We didn't say much. There wasn't much to say. I think we were both too busy trying to process what the hell had just happened. "He didn't come in to steal anything," Adam said quietly, eyes fixed on the distance. "Didn't talk. Didn't make a scene. He just stood there and watched," I added. He nodded. "Yeah, like that's all he came to do." I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second. That blank face, the hollow stare, that lifeless wave. It looped in my brain like a reel of film stuck on repeat. I quit a couple weeks later. Told my manager I had school, stuff to focus on. Truth was, I couldn't step foot back in that theater without expecting to see him standing at the end of the hallway, waiting. Because that's what it felt like. That he was waiting. Watching. Like he wanted us to see him. like he was testing how close he could get without stepping over whatever invisible line kept things from going full nightmare. I never saw him again. Not at the theater, not around town. But sometimes, late at night, when it's too quiet and I catch myself staring out my bedroom window, I wonder if he's still out there, still watching, still waiting. I've always loved movies. Ever since I was a kid, they were my escape hatch. Dark theater, big screen, nobody asking questions. My parents fought a lot when I was younger, and movie nights were the only time the house went quiet. Even now, they still feel like a kind of refuge. Familiar. Safe. A couple years back, I lucked out and found an apartment just a few blocks from this little indie theater. Not flashy, but it had charm. Red velvet seats, a popcorn machine that smelled like childhood, and the kind of flicks that didn't play anywhere else. Best part? I could walk there in 10 minutes flat, rain or shine. Usually I went with friends, Ricky, Danny, sometimes my coworker Beth. But if no one was free, I didn't mind going solo. I've never been the type to wait on someone else to do what I wanna do. That night was one of those solo nights. There was this psychological thriller playing I'd been hyped about. Nothing major, just a slow burn mind bender. I threw on a hoodie, checked my phone, no messages, no missed calls, and headed out. It was one of those quiet evenings where the air had a bite, like fall was trying to sneak in early. Streetlights hummed overhead, and my footsteps echoed in that comforting cinematic way. When I got to the theater, the lobby was practically dead. One bored-looking teenager at the counter, scrolling on his phone. I nodded at him, bought my ticket, grabbed a small popcorn, extra butter, and a Coke and headed inside. The auditorium was mostly empty. A couple people scattered. One guy in a hoodie slouched near the back, an older couple whispering near the front. I slid into a middle seat. Perfect view. Nobody within arm's reach. Just how I liked it. The movie started. Dark, strange, atmospheric. I was in it, and everything felt completely normal, until it didn't. The credits were just starting to roll, soft music playing, lights slowly brightening, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I flinched, not a little twitch, like a full-body jolt. I turned, heart already thumping too fast. There was a man standing way too close, and I mean close. Close enough that I could smell him before I could fully see him. He looked wrong. Not scary movie monster wrong. Real-world gut-level wrong. Disheveled beard, hair slicked with oil or sweat. Clothes that looked like they'd been slept in for a week. And the smell. Cigarettes, sure, but something else. Like rotting takeout. Or old breath trapped in stale fabric. And he was smiling. It was a crooked, off-kilter grin. Didn't touch his eyes. His eyes were flat. Then he said it. I watched you, the whole time. His voice was low and raspy, like he hadn't spoken all day. I blinked. What? I said. He repeated, still smiling. You were watching the movie, but I was watching you. My skin went cold. My first instinct was to laugh it off, like maybe this was some messed up joke. But there was nothing funny about the way he said it, like he genuinely believed it meant something. I sat frozen. My brain tried to rationalize, file it under weird guys at theaters, but it wasn't working. Then he chuckled, soft, like air leaking from a balloon. And without another word, he turned and walked away, steps unhurried, like he hadn't just ripped a hole in my evening. I stayed in my seat, staring at the now empty screen. My popcorn sat untouched in my lap, cold and greasy. My breathing felt shallow. What the hell was that? Had he really been behind me the entire time? Eventually, when most of the theater had cleared out, I forced myself to move. I grabbed my jacket and started heading toward the exit, shaking off the icy crawl in my chest. Then I stepped into the hallway and stopped dead. He was there, just standing by the entrance to the lobby, hands in his pockets, like he was waiting for someone. He wasn't looking right at me, but he didn't have to. He was too close to the door I needed. My stomach flipped. Hard. Every instinct screamed, Don't go near him. I felt my pulse climbing, pounding in my ears. But then I remembered. There was another way out. A side exit near Theater 2. I'd used it before when I was late to meet Ricky. Without looking back, I pivoted and walked fast in the other direction. No hesitation. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the tiniest shift. His head turning, his shoulders angling slightly toward me. I didn't stop. I didn't give him the satisfaction. The hallway was dim and narrow, lined with old movie posters peeling at the edges. My footsteps echoed too loud, too fast. I reached the exit door, shoved it open, and stepped out into the cool night. The air hit me like a slap. Cold, crisp. I stood there for a second, right at the edge of the parking lot, trying to get my breathing under control. The street was just a few feet away. My apartment, 10 minutes that direction. I told myself I was overreacting. He was just some random creep, right? But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Shaking off the creeping dread curling in my gut, I started walking. The first few minutes were quiet, almost too quiet. Just the gentle hum of distant traffic and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. The street lamps buzzed overhead, casting long shadows that danced along the cracked sidewalk. I kept my stride steady, eyes flicking side to side, just in case, but no one was around. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, measured, but definitely there, just far enough behind me to make the hairs on my neck rise. I froze for half a beat, heart hiccuping, before forcing myself to keep moving. I didn't turn around. Not yet. I didn't want to look paranoid, or worse, let whoever it was know they were getting to me. But I was listening, and the footsteps didn't stop. They matched my pace. Not fast, not slow. Just there. I stole a glance over my shoulder, casual-like, and my stomach dropped into my shoes. It was him, backlit by the street lamp a block away, but unmistakable. Same hunched shoulders, same jerky gait, same filthy hoodie. He was following me. I swallowed hard, forced my breath steady. Okay, I told myself, maybe it's nothing. Maybe he lives nearby. Maybe this is just some awful coincidence. But deep down, I knew better. I picked up the pace, feet moving quicker now, trying to stay calm, act natural. He picked up the pace too. Cut down a side street, hoping maybe I could lose him. Fast turns, narrow corners. A minute later, I looked back. He'd made the same turn. That was it. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to run so bad. Just bolt, scream, something. But I didn't. Not yet. I didn't want to feed into whatever this was. So I speed walked, almost jogging now, one hand already in my jacket pocket, fingers gripping my keys like a weapon. Then, finally, I saw it. My apartment building, the warm yellow light over the entrance. Home. I made a beeline for it. My hands were trembling as I fumbled for my keys. I jammed them into the lock, yanked the door open, and slipped inside. The glass door clicked shut behind me, locking automatically, with that satisfying clunk. Safe. I turned to look through the glass. He was there, just outside, standing on the sidewalk like he belonged there, head tilted ever so slightly, eyes locked on the door. My breath came out ragged. My knees felt weak. He couldn't get in, not without a code or a key. I kept telling myself that. Still, I didn't move until I saw him turn away. I didn't blink. Then, I finally stepped into the elevator, hands clenched tight at my sides. I got to my floor, walked into my apartment, shut the door, and threw the deadbolt. Then I leaned my forehead against the wood and exhaled, long and shaky. I was home. I was safe. Right? I stood in the living room for a while, coat still on, heart slowly returning to normal. Maybe he was just some drifter, a weirdo who picked the wrong person to spook. Maybe that was the end of it. Then, a knock. Sharp. Hollow. Deliberate. I froze like a deer in headlights. My eyes darted to the door. Another knock. 2 this time. Even harder. I crept toward the peephole, every step like walking. Through quicksand, I peered through, my blood ran cold, it was him. He was on my floor, at my door. Somehow he'd gotten inside the building. My chest tightened, panic clawing its way up my throat. He jiggled the doorknob, twice, locked, thank God. But still, I flinched like he'd opened it. Then he stepped back, and just stood there. Didn't say a word. Didn't move. Didn't even blink. I don't know what came over me, but something inside snapped. I couldn't just stand there anymore. I unlocked the chain, just a crack, and said, loud and clear, "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." My voice was firmer than I expected. It surprised even me. He stared, not angry, not scared, just empty. Then, finally, after what felt like a full minute of silence, he turned around and walked away, slow and steady, like he'd already done what he came to do. I waited and waited, watched through the peephole until the hallway was clear. I didn't sleep that night, barely even blinked. I never saw him again. But I still hear that knock sometimes, echoing in my memory. Still feel the weight of his stare through that thin wooden door, and I never walk home alone at night anymore. It was supposed to be just another chill night out, nothing fancy, just me and Marissa catching a late movie. Low-key, no drama, no stress. We both needed that. The plan was simple: grab tickets, snag some snacks, and sink into a couple hours of cinematic distraction. The theater wasn't too busy when we pulled up, which I liked. It was that sweet spot after the evening rush, just a handful of folks wandering around, most of them already inside. The air felt calm, hushed in a way that only happens during the last show times, like the whole place was winding down. We picked our seats dead center, middle row, prime viewing spot. The previews kicked off, some big-name trailers, a couple weird artsy flicks. I barely registered them. I was already easing into that cozy, half-zoned-out state, legs stretched, arm draped around Marissa. The room was dim, quiet except for the screen. Felt good. Then she leaned in, real close, and whispered, "Babe, I'm kinda hungry." I raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Didn't we just have tacos like an hour ago?" She gave me that puppy dog look, soft eyes, a tiny shrug. "I know, but I didn't think I'd want popcorn, and now I really do." I sighed, but it was fake annoyed. She knew it. All right, I'll go grab some. You chill." "You sure?" she asked, tugging at my sleeve lightly. "Yeah, it's cool. Be back in a sec." I stood, stretched my arms behind my back, and made my way down the steps toward the exit. The second I pushed through the doors, the contrast smacked me in the face. Bright overhead lights, the low drone of conversation, a register beeping somewhere, and that thick, buttery smell of popcorn in the air. There were a few people scattered around, some in line at concessions, a couple teens giggling near the arcade machines, one dude arguing with his kid over candy. I got in line at the back, rolling my neck a little, glancing up at the menu even though I already knew what I was getting. Then I heard it. "Yo, Nestor." I turned instinctively. Some guy was waving, walking toward me with a grin like we were old pals. I blinked, trying to place him. Nope. Blank. He looked about my age, maybe a little older. Hoodie, faded jeans, a rough edge to him. Face looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. "You don't remember me," he said, still smiling. I hesitated. Should I?" He chuckled. "Lucas, man. You remember Lucas, right?" And that made me freeze for a second. Lucas. Yeah, I remembered that name. High school. We'd been tight back then. Football, parties, dumb teenage chaos. But life happened. We drifted. Last time I saw him, we'd barely been 18. "Yeah," I said slowly. "I remember Lucas." "He's here," the guy said, nodding toward the back hallway. "Come on, he'd freak if he saw you, just around the corner." I glanced at the counter, still a few people ahead. I figured What the hell? A quick hello wouldn't hurt. All right, I said. But I gotta be quick, my girl's waiting. Won't. Take a minute, he said, already turning. I followed, stepping out of the line, letting the lobby noise fall behind as we moved into the side hallway near the smaller screens. This part of the theater felt off somehow, quieter, dimmer. The overhead lights flickered faintly. The hum of the soda machines and chatter from the lobby faded fast. The deeper we went, the more unsettled I felt. Something about the silence. Here. It wasn't right. We turned a corner, then another, and then I saw them. 4 guys, maybe 5, clustered near one of the unused theater entrances. All of them had ski masks pulled over their faces. Instant tension. Every muscle in my body stiffened. I stopped walking. None of them looked like Lucas. Hell, none of them looked like they belonged here at all. The masked guys didn't say anything. They didn't move. But they all looked straight at me. The guy who brought me here slowed, half turned toward me, motioning me forward. Come on, man. He's just over there. His tone had shifted. Too casual, too rehearsed. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just turned around. Calm. Steady. But with every step, my heart beat louder in my chest. Behind me, I heard his voice, suddenly sharper. Yo, where you going? I kept walking, not running, not making a scene, just moving. I hit the lobby doors and pushed through. The moment the fluorescent lights and human noise hit me again, I felt the pressure in my chest ease, barely. But I didn't stop moving. I slipped right back into the concession line like nothing had happened, like my chest wasn't tight and my hands weren't still clammy. Just one more guy waiting for overpriced snacks in a theater full of strangers. No big deal. But a few minutes later, I felt it, that unmistakable tingle on the back of your neck when someone's watching you. I looked over, casually, trying not to look too obvious about it, and there he was. Same guy, same hoodie, standing just barely visible at the corner of the hallway I'd come from, peeking out like he was checking for someone. His eyes scanned the crowd, then locked right onto me. We stared at each other for a second, neither of us moving. Then he ducked back behind the wall. Gone again, like a glitch in the corner of your eye. My stomach turned. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my face straight, trying not to freak out in the middle of a goddamn movie theater. I grabbed the popcorn and drinks, headed back to our screening, and slid into my seat like it was all normal. Marissa barely noticed. I think she was already sucked into the opening scene. I sat there, trying to slow my breathing, heart still thumping behind my ribs like it knew something I didn't. I didn't say anything to her. Not yet. Part of me wanted to believe it was over, that I'd just narrowly dodged something and it was behind me now. But toward the end of the movie, right when the main character was creeping down some dark hallway on screen, I felt it again. That itch behind my eyes. I turned my head toward the entrance, and there they were. 2 of them this time, just inside the door, not moving, not looking at the screen, watching me. Ski masks. Same ones from the hallway. They didn't flinch when I spotted them, didn't pretend to blend in. They just stood there, making sure I saw them. Then, like it was rehearsed, they both turned and walked out without a word. Cold swept through me, like ice water down my spine. I didn't know if it was fear or adrenaline, but my body was on full alert. I checked the door 5-6 more times before the credits rolled. Nothing. They never came back in. Once the lights came up and people started leaving, I turned to Marissa and finally told her everything. Her eyes widened, lips parting like she didn't know whether to laugh it off or take me seriously. But then she saw my face, saw I wasn't joking. We left together, walking slow. I scanned the lobby, the exits, every corner of the parking lot. Empty. Whoever they were gone. That night, when I got home, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Lucas. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounded groggy like I'd woken him up. "Hey man," I said, voice low. "Can I ask you something kind of weird?" I told him what happened. Everything. The guy in the hallway, the ski masks, the way he said Lucas was just around the corner. There was a pause on the other end. Then Lucas said slowly, "Yeah, I think I know who that is." "Who?" I asked, pressing in. Another pause. Longer this time. Finally, he said, "Flat. Stay away from him." That was all. He didn't explain. Didn't offer anything else. And I didn't push. I don't know what. They were planning that night. I don't know why they picked me or how it all ties back to Lucas, but I know this much. I walked away, and I thank God I did. What would you have done if you were in my shoes that night? Drop a comment below. Seriously, I want to hear your take. Ever faced something that made you question reality? Maybe a strange encounter, a moment that blurred the line between logic and something else? Let's talk about that razor-thin edge between science and madness. If these stories from Mr. Inecdote are getting under your skin, hit that like button. Share the fear with your friends and subscribe so you don't miss the next spine-tingling descent into the unknown. Your support keeps the nightmares alive, and trust me, what's coming next? You won't want to sleep through it. One click, one story, endless dread. Stick around.